Well, hello, challengees, and welcome to the Always Better Challenge Show, the show devoted to helping you have a happier tomorrow by having a better today. I'm your host, Joe Bedford. It's Casual Friday today, and in Tennessee on Friday, we wear orange, and most of the other days as well. Hope you're having a great day. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving yesterday. And today, the topic of the show is Let Food Be Thy Medicine. We are going to talk about the importance of nutrition. It is certainly a very important thing in having you have the best life that you can have. It's so important in your health. As my very intelligent wife, Judy, is so fond of saying, health is truly the greatest wealth. So very important that we're going to talk about that today. Today's episode is brought to you once again by Synergy Kombucha, even though they have sent me no money yet. I guess that check got lost. Look, guys, if you're not going to send me money, send me some free kombucha. I'm addicted to this stuff. Come on. Give a brother a break. So hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. As always, I start with a quote, and you're going to dig who today's quote is from. The doctor of the future will no longer treat the human frame with drugs, but rather will cure and prevent disease with nutrition. And that was said by Thomas Edison, my buddy from, I believe that was episode 1. So we're going to talk about the importance of nutrition today. Those of you who know me in real life may know that Jack LaLanne was a huge mentor, influence, whatever word you want to use, inspiration of mine. For those of you who may not know who Jack LaLanne was, I can't hardly imagine that, but he was a true fitness guru. He had one of the first fitness television shows. It was a daily show well before my time. It started back in the 50s, I believe. I do remember seeing it when I was a kid, though. Jack, I just loved him. He, for a lot of reasons, excuse me, I'm making an adjustment here. It's live. I always warn y'all about that. I hope that's better. Jack was he's a legend in fitness circles. It's easy to think that the way we think about things today is how it's always been, but that wasn't the case. Jack, brought the ideas of exercise, and especially for women, and working out with weights, and that was crazy at the time. People thought, oh, you'll get muscle bound, and they had some really strange ideas about that. So we owe him a lot as far as our current fitness beliefs, for want of a better word. A lot of people don't know this. The jumping jack was named after Jack LaLanne. He originated that. So yeah, he was kind of a big deal. So saying all that, though, in spite of all that, I disagree with Jack on I don't know if I'm going to say a fundamental concept, but in a kind of a big way, at least how we rank things. I maybe could have used this as the quote of the day. One of Jack's favorite quotes was, exercise is king, nutrition is queen. Put the two of them together and you've got yourself a kingdom. I have to disagree. As important as I believe exercise is, I believe nutrition is more important, the most important. I can't imagine what could be more important than what we put in our bodies several times every single day of our lives. It's the fuel that we run on. So to me, it is the most important factor in health. And I know it can be a difficult topic. I know there's a lot of confusion out there. Are you nodding your head? Are you saying, yeah, I'm confused? There's all this conflicting information. One TV show or website or book or whatever says one thing, and another book seems to say a completely different thing. Well, not that I have all the answers, but I am going to do my best to help you sort of filter through that, or at least lead you through the process that I've used to try to filter through it myself. I'm going to start off by saying you've got two big tools to use for filtering, for want of a better way of putting it. The first is a concept called peer-reviewed scientific research. The reason that I bring this up, it's anybody can go on a website or blog or whatever, or even a book, and they can say whatever they want to say. And they can pull out studies to supposedly back up what they're saying. The thing to keep in mind about scientific studies is that they're not all great. The design of the study has a lot to do with the value of the results. You also have to look at things like potential bias. Who funded the study? So things like that really have to come into play. So why I bring up peer-reviewed scientific research, this means that a particular study has been reviewed by other scientists, by peers of the scientists who did the study, and that they have, given it a thumbs up as far as that it was designed well and is meaningful, and etc. So one study in isolation is not very helpful or valuable information. But if we look at what's the word I'm looking for, the whole, and on a particular topic. So that's one thing that I think is helpful in filtering through everything that's out there. And another is just good old-fashioned common sense. And I'm going to talk about a lot of common sense principles that you already know. Eat a lot of vegetables. You know that's common sense, and I don't think hardly anyone could disagree with that. Eat food that your great-grandma would recognize as food. That's going to be something else that we talk about. The other point I want to make, again, excuse me, is that, I'm going to try to talk about the important major points. There are some minor, fine finesse points that we could argue about. Don't sweat the small stuff so much. Look at that. The way I do it is, and I've talked about this in previous podcasts in relation to other things, is, look on it as an experiment with the finer stuff. Paleo, that's an okay diet. In my opinion, it is needlessly restrictive, but that's just my opinion. But if it appeals to you, then try it and see how you feel and see what kind of results you get. See what happens with your weight. See what happens with your body composition. Try it out. Gluten, again, this is my opinion, but it's a fatty thing to me in that a lot of people are avoiding gluten who, in my mind, probably don't really need to, but again, that's my opinion. If you've experimented with it and you've cut gluten out and you're getting good results, then go. You don't need to listen to me. You're doing what works for you, and great. So focus on the major points, don't sweat the minor points, and experiment. So let's talk about some of the major points. I've already teased this, I guess, a little bit. We want to eat real foods. We want to eat foods that our great-grandma would recognize as food. And again, I think we all know, for the most part, what most of the healthy foods are. Vegetables, fruits, meat and fish, nuts, seeds, beans, whole grains, healthy fats. That's what I'm throwing out there as some of the, important healthy foods. Veggies are king, man. The better variety and quantity of you can't hardly eat too many veggies, I don't think. They are filled with nutrients and micronutrients and phytochemicals and all sorts of good stuff. I hope I'm not talking above my pay grade there with the phraseology. Fruit has gotten, I think, kind of a bad rap in recent years. I put this in the minor points and opinion category. Some of you may disagree with me. Folks want to point out that fruit has a lot of sugar in it. That may be true, but it's naturally occurring sugar. I don't think that's a huge problem. Maybe you don't want to eat as much fruit as vegetables, maybe, but I just don't think it's going to be. Let me put it this way. It's certainly a lot better than a lot of the fake food and a lot of the junk food out there to enjoy some fruit. And yes, I even include fruit juice in that, which is, I guess, more controversial. Some folks will say, well, it's so calorie dense, and if you're trying to lose weight, well, maybe then that's an experiment that you try. Maybe you try cutting out fruit juice, see what that does for you. Or if you enjoy fruit juice and you're getting good results, then I think you're okay. Meat and fish, again, there are vegetarians and vegans out there, obviously, who don't eat meat and fish, and that's fine, but I don't think that it's a bad thing eating meat and fish either. Fish I think everyone knows about the omega fatty acids that you can get from fish that are so beneficial to health. Meat, and again, we can talk there about a lot of folks will stick with non-red meat as much as possible, poultry, chicken, etc. Some other folks, the paleo folks, I believe, like red meat pretty good. A lot of your bodybuilders like red meat pretty good. In the past, I think saturated fats have gotten a bad rap, and now there's some evidence out there that I've seen that maybe they're not as bad as we think. Again, I'm putting that in the minor category because again, I don't want to get in arguments here, and I don't want to have conflict. I want to talk about the things that we know are good. Again, I'm going to say any kind of well-raised meat or wild-caught fish. With fish, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here a little bit. With fish, folks worry about the contamination and whatnot, so that's an issue. I'm saying experiment, and I'm saying it's better than the processed, packaged crap in a box. So that's why I'm putting those out there as healthy foods, and they're foods that I eat, and they're foods that I feel like I get good results from. So take that for what it is. Nuts and seeds. Again, your nuts are the criticism there is that they're calorie dense and have a lot of fat, but it's healthy fat. Again, yeah, you don't want to live off of nuts, and nut butters too. I love peanut butter and almond butter. Ooh, good stuff. And I feel like it's good for you. Definitely part of a healthy diet. Beans. I guess the paleo folks don't like beans. I like beans. I think they're great. Whole grains, I think the paleo folks don't like those as well. Again, I'm not going to say that's the foundation of my diet or anything like that, but I think some good whole grains are fine, and I enjoy eating them. That's part of it too. We have to have a diet that's sustainable for us. Healthy fats. Already talked about nuts and seeds. Olive oil. I'm a big fan of olive oil. There's a lot of evidence that I've seen that that's one of the healthiest fats out there, and I'm getting just an inch ahead of myself. The Mediterranean diet, olive oil is a big part of that, and the Mediterranean diet is actually what I'm going to talk about right now. Again, this is just how do I want to say this? I've given you some we've talked about some healthy foods above. You can find your own way with that. If you're a person that likes a little more structure or framework, I've talked about the helpfulness of that in previous episodes for me. And so you're wanting to look for a plan that you can follow. Obviously I don't want to propose any fad diets, not a fan of those. But one that in my opinion has stood the test of time is the Mediterranean diet. I'm not going to talk about that in detail. That's certainly something you can Google if you want more information on that. Just to say that what I've talked about just a moment ago is going to be in line with that. They're going to eat lots of veggies, fruit, meat and fish, especially fish. I guess they lean away from the red meats a little bit, if I recall correctly. They like the nuts, the seeds, the beans, legumes. I always struggle with pronouncing that. And the whole grains, and they love the olive oil. So Mediterranean, I think, is good. As I've already said, I think the paleo diet can work. There's some things that they don't want you to eat that I don't personally think is a problem to eat, but if you like it and it works for you, then great. It's certainly better than a junk food diet. Again, I'm going to come back to that idea over and over. Same thing with the avoiding gluten idea. If it works for you, great. So, talked about foods you want to eat. How about foods you don't want to eat? You know what these are, right? I bet you do. What would be number one on my list? I think number one on my list would be soda. I don't want to throw certain brands under the bus, but soft drinks. They're loaded with sugar. That's really all they are. They're sugar water. And I guzzled them when I was a kid. They, laughingly called me a Coca-holic. I can talk more about that later. It's like the worst thing. It makes it difficult managing your weight. Soda. If you didn't do anything else except cut out soda, you'd see good results. I know you would. People are going to say diet soda. Not a fan of that either. Not a fan of artificial sweeteners. Again, food that your great grandma would recognize as food, not crazy stuff like that. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan. Is it better than soda? It's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic for me. You're going to be better off without either one of them. And there's so many great alternatives out there. And we've talked about habits already. We've talked about smoking. And if it's a habit for you to drink soft drinks, I get it. That's a big change to make, but it's a good change in my opinion. And it's a change that I made. Again, I'm still not asking you to do anything I haven't done myself. I used to guzzle the stuff, and I do not drink soda anymore. Almost never. I mean, I'm thinking of some folks who are going to say, "Well, I saw you with a soda after a triathlon or something," but it's almost never. And I honestly can't remember the last time I had a soda. It had to be a year or more ago, I'm going to say. It's bad stuff. Really any added sugar. I mean, again, we talked about getting some sugar from fruit, and that's fine. But added sugar, I think it's one of the biggest problems that we face as far as the American diet. Just don't think it's good stuff. So, well, what else? Potato chips, and I'll admit that's one. I can eat some potato chips, but I know they're not good for me. So that's definitely something I do my best to avoid. But there are maybe a few there are, I guess, a few exceptions or ones that we can give a little grace to, or say they're a little gray area. But most any packaged food, anything that comes in a box or a bag, is not going to be the best for you. Like there are some exceptions, as I say, that still aren't ideal, but they're not awful. I buy RX bars. They're a snack bar, protein bar, whatever you want to call them. They're made from very simple, real ingredients, and so I think those are a good, compromise as far as they're convenient and easy to eat when you're in a rush or something like that. So I think that's a good compromise. Lara bars, I haven't, researched those as much, but I've heard those are similarly good. And there's some other options out there, I'm sure. Those are just ones that are occurring to me right off the bat. And I apologize. This is not fitting in good, but it's a point I need to make. I haven't talked about alcohol, and I'm probably going to do a whole episode about alcohol at some point. But for now, let's just say that, obviously for optimal nutrition, alcohol consumption needs to be at a moderate level. And as I say, that's a subject we'll delve more into later. And certainly if you don't drink, you don't need to drink. So we've talked about good foods. We've talked about bad foods. And one other point that I'll make on that before I talk about some of these other points I've got up here. Eating out. Eating out makes good nutrition very, very, very difficult and tricky. So my advice to you is to eat out as little as possible. It is so much better nutritionally to prepare your food at home. You're in complete control of how the food is prepared and what it's prepared with. Some of the items that you want to eliminate, and I just realized one that I didn't have in my notes that I'm not a big fan of is, I just see where I missed it. I missed one of my notes, so we'll go back to that. Actually, let's go back to that now. I apologize. Some other things I've talked about avoiding processed foods. I've talked about avoiding soda. I've talked about avoiding added sugar. One thing I didn't talk about is enriched flour, which has all the nutrients basically stripped out of it. And the reason they call it enriched is then they try to artificially put vitamins back in. And again, I don't think this is too controversial. I think you've probably heard this before, that you don't want to eat a lot of white flour products. Your cookies and pastries that are made from that. Again, those have got tons of sugar in them as well. Your white bread, stuff like that. Chips we talked about. Two things I don't think I've touched on yet are vegetable oil. Vegetable oil is something that I take great pains to avoid, and you have to watch out for that stuff. And that's what reminded me when I was talking about eating out, is you don't know what's been cooked in vegetable oil. Something I want to caution you about that I learned myself and was surprised. I had gotten an olive oil mayonnaise. That's what it was referred to as, olive oil mayonnaise. And I'm like, well, great, it's olive oil, so it's healthy. Well, yeah, it had olive oil in it and vegetable oil. It's like they put olive oil in it so they can call it olive oil mayo, I guess, but it's got vegetable oil in it, and I don't want to have that, so I got rid of that. Something else that we want to avoid at all costs, and this is not so much an ingredient, but something that comes out, well, it can be the ingredients or the way the food is prepared, is trans fats. I'm sure you've heard about these. This stuff is awful. You don't want any of it in your diet. None. I can't stress that enough. None. This stuff is awful. It's like candle wax in your arteries is the way I heard it described once. You don't want it. So check those labels and, you know, all the resources out there with the internet. If it's got trans fat in it, man, stay away. So I apologize. I'm jumping around here, as I said on my notes. Talked about the importance of trying not to eat out as much because you're not in control as much of how the food's made. Some other tips, if we can redefine what a treat is, I think that messes us up. We get the idea that, oh, I want to treat myself, so I want the chips, or I want the cookies, or I want the ice cream, or I want the Funyuns and Dr. Pepper, Mary, if you're watching. Inside joke for the rest of it. Or she inside joke for her, not, you know what I'm trying to say. So we need to redefine what treats are. The one that always just jumps right to my mind when I want a treat is I get some of the, I never can remember how to pronounce it, even though it says right on the thing, Fage, F-A-G-E, the yogurt, the Greek yogurt, and I do use the whole fat version, which may be controversial to some of you, and I probably could talk about how I don't like low fat or no fat products because, again, it's artificial, and I don't think that, well, I don't even know how much I want to talk about this. I'll just say it real briefly that we've gotten more and more obsessed with low fat. I guess that started, what, in the 80s? And I think it's really interesting that low fat has been all in the media and the advertising and everything, and the obesity rate has climbed. Now, correlation doesn't mean causation, so maybe I'm giving an unfair rap there to the low fat thing, but And I've had different feelings about it at different times in my life, but for now I'm doing the whole fat, and that's what I do. But anyway, my treat, my whole fat Fage, I think that's how you say it, Greek yogurt, and some blueberries. Man, that's good. That's decadent. It's indulgent. I hear so much. Be indulgent, be decadent. Eat this garbage. To me that's not indulgent. That's I want my indulgence to taste good and be healthy, and things like that, to me are out there. Herbs and spices when you cook, man, that's your friend. That you can make delicious food, and that's if there's one point that I want to make with this show, that's it. I eat, in my opinion, a very healthy diet, and I do not feel deprived in the least. I eat great tasting food. Great tasting food. The other thing is, I think you train your palate to an extent. I know that, changes I've made, because let me tell you, I used to eat as much garbage as more than any of y'all maybe. And you get used to eating that and your palate gets used to it. But when I made changes and cut things out, I love the food I eat now. And the really funny thing is, if I do get that crazy idea where I think I want to eat some junk and I eat it, and it doesn't taste good to me anymore. And not only that, I think my body has gotten so used to running on good stuff that I give it bad stuff, it doesn't know what to do with it, and I feel awful. So that's some real good feedback right there for me to get me right back on track. So training your palate, I think, helps. I'm going to have to edit down, I think, a little bit what I cover today, because I see we're coming up on 24 minutes. So I guess I'll run through these real quick. I had, as I've done in past shows, I wanted to give you a resource and a tool that I use. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and talk about these because I've got time, because this won't take long. My resource for you is MyFitnessPal. This is an app you can get on your phone. They also have a website, a web interface, so you can do it that way. This helps you count calories is the main thing it does. It does have some other functionality as well. Oh, it's free, by the way, so that's always a good thing. Excuse me. So anything you're doing with trying to manage your weight or your body composition or anything like that, this is such helpful information for you to have. Is it a lot of work? Yes, especially initially. The tool makes it a lot easier. Is this work? I can't talk. Is this work worth doing? Is this work worth doing? If you're serious about what you're trying to do, you need to have the information that you need to do it. And to me, this is where this tool shines. It does make it easier. You can, if you go to use the tool, you'll see how it works. But you can put in foods, and then it knows the calorie content and some of the macronutrient breakdown, and so it puts that all in there for you, and then you can track that on a daily basis and see what you've done. It also allows you to set goals. There's a social component to it where you can communicate with other users. It'll do alerts like if you've eaten enough, if you put a food in and it's going to take you over your sugar goal for the day or something. Excuse me, it might say this food is really high in sugar, or it might give you a good alert, this is high in protein or whatever. What I do with this when I use it is I use it in conjunction with a spreadsheet that I made. I haven't found a better way to do this. Basically what I'm doing is I track how many calories I take in each day, and I track my weight each day. And a tip that I picked up from, I'm not sure where I picked this up, I track my 7-day weight average. So my average for the past 7 days. That helps smooth out some of the weird little ups and downs that you have and keeps you from panicking if your weight jumps way up, and don't overreact if it jumps way down. Smooths that out. The average gives you, I think, a little more useful metric to make sure you're going in the right direction, whatever direction it is that you're trying to go. And again, then you can experiment too. And this will help you figure out exactly how many calories you want to take in to get your goal, because you can see if it's working or not. And folks, say, well, but counting all those calories, that takes forever. If you're serious about trying to do something, you got to take the time to do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a life commitment. I don't always track my calories. It's like once you get it dialed in and you've got your plan is working, and you kind of just get a feel for what you're eating, you're able to do it pretty good without necessarily counting all the calories. So don't think that it's a life sentence, but it is something that I would recommend you try doing. But it's almost like an educational thing. So that's that. My tool is a body fat scale. I think it's important to track your body fat. It's really more important than your weight. People get hung up on weight, and especially if you're working out and building some muscle, that can cause your weight to go up, but that's not a bad thing if you're trying to gain muscle. So body fat, I think, is more helpful. Yeah, folks will say they're not accurate, and maybe they're not, the scales that you can have at home, but at least it gives you an idea, and I do think it allows you to at least see a trend. And so I think it's helpful information. There are other more accurate ways that you can measure your body fat. I'm not going to go into those here because, honestly, I don't know that there's a 100% accurate one. So we make our best guesses, and there's lots of tools you can use. You can use calipers. You can look in the mirror and compare to. There's things you can look up on the internet that'll show you pictures of different people at different body fat percentages, and you can estimate it better than you'd think that way. So a body fat scale, again, I'm not affiliated with any of these products, but the one that I have is Tony Little's Body Express. That's made by Homedics. I like that one. I've had it for years. The one I kind of covet, it's made by Tanita. It's called the BC 1000 Plus. It works with your computer and your Garmin, gives you tons of measurements. I'm a big data geek, so I've coveted that one. It's $250, so I haven't dropped the change for that one yet. But if anyone wants to buy me one for Christmas, feel free. You might remember I mentioned that I do weigh daily. That's my strategy. What gets measured gets managed. I know folks say, I apologize. Oh, I just sold something on eBay. Great. What gets measured gets managed, and folks say, well, don't weigh every day, you're going to get hung up on it. Well, no, just don't get hung up on it. It's one of the reasons I said track the weekly average, and I think that'll help you. But, I want to know what's going on. And negative thoughts don't serve you. Getting freaking out about, which way the scale moved today is not serving you. Just say, okay, what did we learn from this? What can we do to, get where we want to go? So we're running out of time. I hope this was a very helpful message. And I always have a daily challenge. Here's the daily challenge. Use what we've talked about in this show. Commit to eating right. Do it for a day. Try it for a day. You can do that, right? Try to cut out the crap and eat the good stuff for a day. See how it goes. For those of you who are already eating healthy, you're going to have to just step your game up and make up your own daily challenge and figure out how you're going to do it better. If you're slipping here and there, then do it for a week, or you're going to have to make up your own there. As always, please subscribe to the show. If you haven't already, please tell a friend. Please visit our website at alwaysbetterchallenge.com. You can sign up for our daily boost email where I give you, you know me and the quotes. I love the quotes, and I'll also tell you what was on the show the previous day in case you missed it, and what's going to be on the show next. And like I say, I'm trying to make those daily. I'm getting my sea legs under me with all this stuff, though, so please bear with me. Questions, if you have questions you want me to answer on a show. I asked a question and got some answers on the Facebook group, I believe it was. Just so you folks know, I'm going to deal with those in a future episode. I want you to know those were heard and those were good questions, and I'm going to deal with those. The tagline, oh gosh, this has been... So the past couple episodes, I've talked about how I want a tagline and I don't have one, and I wasn't able to think of one, and then somebody made a suggestion, and I thought it was a great suggestion, and then I heard a similar quote, and I thought, well, that's even better. Then I remembered that I'd already put one on the website, and I'd completely forgotten about it. I'm so embarrassed by that. And then I thought of a better version of the one on the website, and so I've been all over the place. And now I'm going a completely different direction. So here's, I think, going to be my tagline. I want to tell you the story behind it, because this one has a story. I was spectating, I believe it was at the Knoxville Marathon one year, and wasn't participating that year, I guess. I can't remember, or I was already done. I don't know. So I was spectating, and there was another spectator standing next to me. I don't know who this guy was. He was the best spectator / cheerleader I've ever seen in my life. He was just energetic and, you know, just a great cheerleader. But I loved what he was saying. His folks were running by, and he didn't know these folks, right? So he'd get their bib number, he'd read their bib number, and he'd clap, and he's like, "Hey, 546, make it happen. 722, make it happen." And I loved that phrase that he used, make it happen. And here's why. He didn't know these people. He didn't know what they were out there trying to do. And every single one of them, I'm sure, was trying to do something different. Maybe one person is just trying to finish. It's their first race of this length, and they're just trying to finish. Maybe another person has a time goal. Maybe the third person is just out there to have a good time and see folks and get high fives. Everybody was out there with a different goal, but whatever their goal was, what he was saying worked, right? Make it happen. So, thanks for watching the Always Better Challenge show. We'll see you on Monday, and until then, make it happen. Ciao.